welcome back to another episode of We Don't Know What to Watch, the podcast where two guys have a lot of extra time on their hands. And with me, as always, is the couch potato to my real potato, Kyle Mulford, and I'm Noah Saturn. How you doing, Kyle?
When you're still under quarantine, what else is there to be other than a couch potato? I'm that guy. I'm doing all right. It's been I haven't posted a couple of weeks because we haven't recorded in like 4 weeks because we live in Iowa. We got hit with a category 3 hurricane. Let that sink in.
Yeah, that was something.
How's your family doing? You're in Cedar Rapids, so you got more.
Yeah, we're fine. We lost power for like 7 days, but we've had it back for like almost 2 weeks now, so we're good. Yeah, it's just been really weird. Everything was just kind of like shoved aside just because got to take care of immediate needs.
Yeah. So, ironically, we didn't get hit as bad with the big hurricane winds just down a little bit further south here in North Liberty, but I'm now trying to get stuff fixed from a hailstorm like 2 or 3 weeks before, or like 1 or 2 weeks before that. So, and now like lumber prices are going up because everybody needs to fix things. So let's gouge the customers. So it's just kind of a mess right now. So and then this has been the first week of school for my daughters, and we did virtual. I'm thankful and lucky that I can work from home, so I'm able to stay home and they can do virtual. Because I'll tell you, we're on day 4 of school, and our high school is already quarantined for 24 hours because of a positive case.
That was fast.
Well, it turns out that and I don't know anything about it, so I'm not going to say too much about it, but apparently there was a large high school gathering the weekend before school started because that's a smart idea during a pandemic.
It is what it is, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and here's my thing. I'm not going to hold back too much on judging because that decision affected everyone at that high school. So if you're going back to that high school and you decide to have a big gathering during a pandemic, and then you go back and you're positive, and then that shuts down the entire high school for all of those other parents that needed to send their kids back to school because they just can't do virtual, that just put a big burden on a lot of families because you wanted to have one last hurrah in the summer. So I will be a little judgy on that. So
No, you could always do my kind of last hurrah in the summer, where you just walk out in the woods naked and howl at the moon with your wolf brethren.
I like it because you're isolated in the woods. But anyway, yeah. So I think virtual school's been going okay for the girls so far. So I mean, it's a learning curve for everybody, including the teachers. But it seems to be working so far. So
yeah, this is now back to the actual stuff we're supposed to be talking about.
Yeah.
This is what you're watching episodes with. This is a mini episode. Sometimes they're long, most times they're mini, where we just kind of go through all the different movies we've been watching lately and what we like, what we dislike, and what we found weird.
Yeah. So do you want to start with your multitude of Godzilla movies?
Yeah, I watched a lot of Godzilla movies. I'm trying to, there's almost there's like 32 films in it now. I think that's not counting the upcoming King Kong versus Godzilla. So this has just been an ongoing odyssey. I've made it through the second series, and I'm slowly working my way through the third series.
Nice.
But yeah, I guess I'll just kind of go through everything I've seen really fast. My Cousin Vinny, really great. Marissa
I
Tomei's
love that.
The Man Who Would Be Polka King, really interesting documentary about this kind of just bizarre story about like almost like pyramid schemes. Just kind of weird, fascinating dude, and can be kind of funny too. And Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, which is amazing, should be seen by everyone. It's just a parody of all like those prestige music dramas. It's about the life of this music icon named Dewey Cox, kind of a riff on like Johnny Cash, and he goes through all the stages. He does drugs, he does this, he does that, does an experimental album, he gets a TV show, like he goes to rehab more than once. He even just follows everything so well, starring John C. Reilly as Dewey Cox. And the thing is, though, the music in it is actually really good.
I'm sometimes hit and miss with John C. Reilly. Yeah, John. John C. Riley. But I think it's when he pairs with Will Ferrell that I'm less wanting to watch it. So I might have to watch Walk Hard.
This one's great. It's just so goofy straight from the top. To spoil a little bit of it, he's got like a childhood tragedy, and his childhood tragedy is that like his brother, who was like much better than him at everything, and like a really good musician, and then like his brother gets like cut in half when they were fighting with machetes.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
It's great. Then I watched Annie Get Your Gun, the classic musical. Anything you can do, I can do better. That was
I
fun.
I own that. I've never seen it.
Oh, you should watch it sometime.
That might
You got
have to be a Friday night movie with the girls.
That'd be a good one. Then I watched Murder by Contract, an old school noir. That was fun. And then I watched Godzilla versus Mothra, which is just continuing in the second series. Godzilla goes against Mothra. And then Batra shows up too to fight Godzilla. Godzilla was still kind of a bad guy in this one. Continuing on, I watched Hardcore Henry, which is that movie that came out a few years ago that's just like all in first person. Feels like a first person like shooter video game. That was fun. That one's short. I saw that on Netflix. So
Okay.
that one's good to watch. You're not there for the plot, you're there for the fun action. Then I watched The Natural, sort of the 1980s baseball movie. I watched that because that was right around the time that Wilford Brimley passed away. So I kind of watched that in honor of him as one of his movies.
Oh, okay.
Also, really good soundtrack. So if you like a baseball movies and you're not afraid of being almost a little too, you don't like it, you like a little bit of cheese, a little good sincerity in it. It's a good baseball movie. I
I
like baseball movies more than like baseball sometimes.
I am the same way. I love baseball movies, and I grew out of baseball when they had the strike back in the '90s. I've not liked it ever since, but I still love a good baseball movie, and actually, The Natural is really a good movie.
Then I watched Mystery Train, which was my second Jim Jarmusch film. First one being The Dead Don't Die way back when. And I think I like this one a little bit better. It seemed like I'm not saying there's more of a plot, but this one was more of an anthology style film about people coming to Nashville to go see stuff about Elvis. And then at one point, Elvis's ghost shows up briefly. It's
Okay.
kind of a really oddball film, but still kind of fun, interesting. Steve Buscemi shows up. I like Steve Buscemi.
I've only seen more of his more recent stuff, and I am just not a Jarmusch fan. So, but I'd be interested to see if like some of his early stuff is any
Hmm.
better, or if it's all this just the same.
And I watched Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. More Godzilla.
Godzilla and Machine Godzilla.
There's Godzilla and there's Mechagodzilla. And they fight. And
Let
then
them
I watched
fight.
Dick Tracy from 1990. That
Oh,
movie is gorgeous to look at, and the makeup is incredible.
I've got that on my to rewatch list because I haven't seen that since I was a kid. Or well, yeah, since I was a kid.
Yeah, it turns out there's only like 6 colors throughout the film. So every time you see a yellow, it's a single yellow. Every time you see a green, it's a single green. Really makes it feel like you're reading a comic.
I kind of remember that feeling too. Of it was very like solid colors and bright and very comic book feel to it.
So yeah, just visually, it's really good. And it's got Warren Beatty, and then it's got Big Boy Caprice as played by Al Pacino, and Pacino is having a great time Pacinoing it up.
Yeah, well, and I loved Dustin Hoffman as Mumbles also.
Yeah, he's there for like one scene, and then he's
Yeah,
gone.
the interrogation scene. So good. I still remember that, and I haven't seen this movie since the '90s.
But let's see, I watched it. I got a copy from the library, but like I missed certain chunks just because of scratches from it, so I need to watch that one again.
Hey, can we put a PSA out there? People who get movies from libraries, will you take care of it? It's not your movie.
I don't know what they're doing it. They're using it to like clean out their gutters or something. I don't know how
Yeah,
these
because
discs get in such hard condition.
there are too many times where I've gotten movies from the library, and I'm just like, how do you even possibly manage to mangle the back of the disc like this? Anyway, off the soapbox.
Then I jumped ahead to the third Godzilla series because it was like a triple feature DVD, and I happened like, well, I already watched one. I've already seen two of the three. Might as well watch the third one. And that was Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, All Out Attack. That was from the third series, and the third series started around 1998. Excuse me, 1999. And what's interesting about that one is that they're all really more standalone films. So you kind of watch whichever one you want, as long as you know what Godzilla is. They pretty much explain everything else.
Nice.
And then I watched Godzilla versus Space Godzilla. It's in the second series, and this one's I like the plot of this one. Basically, some like cells from Godzilla's body somehow like went into space, went through a black hole, and whoops! Now we've got evil Space Godzilla who's got these giant like crystals on his shoulders.
I mean, that's what happens when you go through a black hole.
You've become a Space Godzilla,
Yes, you become the evil version of your Space Godzilla.
of course. And after that, I watched Falling Down, directed by Joel Schumacher, starring Michael Douglas and Robert Duvall, and I think Barbara Hershey. I had never seen that one before, and man, that film is dark. Not like literally dark because it takes place over the course of one very hot day, but just thematic, like wow. And these characters, I don't think there's a single quote unquote good guy in this whole film.
I'm sorry. What was the movie?
Falling Down.
I like Falling. I own that one. That is, yeah, it really is. But like, I really enjoyed it because Michael Douglas's character is one of those like it's just like you finally had it with all the bullshit, and you just snap. It's like one of those you'd never do it, but it's just you feel his pain for his like like all the little things just start making him just go like the burger. I want a burger like it looks on the picture. What is this? No, that is a really good film, actually.
Yep. And I've been wanting to watch more Joel Schumacher movies because the only ones I'd really seen before was like his Batman movies, and that was a long time ago. And then like Phantom of the Opera, which wasn't very good. So
He gets a bad rap for the Batman movies. He does have some decent films in his filmography. So, yeah, I'd check out more Joel Schumacher if you're not real familiar with all of his stuff.
also just his life story, he was a really interesting dude. It was pretty cool because he was one of the first. He was able to be an out gay filmmaker in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got an interesting career.
Yeah. Then I watched Lone Wolf and Cub, Baby Cart in Hades. This is the third of the Lone Wolf and Cub one. This one takes place around a river, and it's more Lone Wolf and Cub goodness, some fun uses of the baby cart, and of course, lots of blood, lots of sword play. These aren't aiming for. This is no Akira Kurosawa film. It's not aiming for high art. It's aiming for fun.
And for anybody who doesn't know, those are on Canopy because those are on my to watch list. So I'm eventually going to get to those. And
Yeah.
I hope that by the time I get to them, they're still on Canopy.
Then I watched Kind Hearts and Coronets. This one was basically about around kind of Victorian England era, where a young man realizes he's been kind of cheated out of any sort of big inheritance because his mother's family basically disowned her. And then and after she dies, he realizes, maybe I can get back into my inheritance and my family's good graces if I kill everyone who's in line for the inheritance before me. And this is a dark comedy, so they die in kind of silly and goofy ways. But then all 8 members of this family that he has to kill are all played by Alec Guinness.
Oh, that's awesome. That
Yeah,
seems worth it right there.
yeah. So it's fun to see Alec Guinness in kind of a more goofier role because he has done some good comedy stuff. And it's fun to see still kind of being very stiff, very British, very proper about everything. And then like one of them is just like a woman who's like who's big in like the suffragist movement, going up on a hot air balloon, and then it just cuts to like the main guy with like holding a bow and arrow. So really kind of dark humor like that.
Nice.
And then I watched Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, part of the Vengeance trilogy, which is Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, Old Boy, and Sympathy for Lady Vengeance in the 2000 South Korean films.
Did that
Boy,
get
how
renamed?
this
Because what isn't it usually just labeled Lady Vengeance? Or is that just the English title?
I might just be the English title,
Okay.
but yeah, this is another dark film. Park Chan Wook. I think I talked some about his other films before. Yeah, dark movie. Song Kang Ho shows up because apparently that's just what he does in South Korean movies. He's everywhere. And Song Kang Ho played the dad of the poor family in Parasite. So
Yeah,
yeah,
have you seen this trilogy before?
I have not seen any of this. Was the first one, so I'm just gonna go through all 3 of them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, this is a really good like you said, really dark, but it's a really good trilogy. So
Then I watched Waiting for Guffman, the mockumentary about, a small theater group in a small town, Missouri, putting together, of course, Corky Sinclair. It's a Christopher Guest film, one of his mockumentaries with his usual crew. And it's pretty good. And honestly, this kind of feels like, all right, so this is where stuff like The Office comes from. This is where stuff like Parks and Rec comes from. It really did feel like, oh, so this is where Parks and Rec took everything, kind of
Oh
the
yeah,
small town politics and all working together.
yeah. I love his films. I'm a big fan of Best in Show. So
But yeah, just Corky St. Clair or something else.
those are good.
And then I watched A Matter of Life and Death by Powell and Pressburger. They were a British filmmaking duo. And they made some amazing Technicolor films. And this one was kind of cool because it's about a British airman who's towards the end of World War II, and his plane is going to crash and going, because it's on fire. And then he's on the radio with an American woman, and they kind of slowly fall in love. And eventually he jumps out without a parachute, somehow survives, and then it turns out that like he survived because the afterlife, heaven or whatever, made a mistake. It made like a clerical error, so now they want to get him, but then he has to prove to himself like, no, I want to stay here. It was your error, not mine. I want to stay here, and because I love this woman. So it's interesting because all the stuff that's in the afterlife is in black and white, but then everything on Earth is in color. And the black and white looks different from normal black and white you'd see at that time because it was actually shot in color and then somehow transferred over to black and white.
Huh.
Really cool. Has a really awesome courtroom scene towards the end, and sort of courtroom scene for like, the angels and judges and the jury of all like people that have passed on. Interesting depiction of heaven. I really liked it. And if you like sort of kind of a weird but also romance and just really charming film, I'd check that one out.
That sounds fascinating.
And then, back to my regular BS. Then I watched Godzilla versus Destroyah, which is the last film in the Godzilla series, in the second series of Godzilla. And at this one, I kind of like the basic premise. Godzilla is slowly dying, and because his heart is basically a nuclear reactor, he's either going to explode or he's going to slowly melt down. So they have to figure out how to deal with Godzilla. But then there's this evil monster, demon like thing named Destroyah that also comes out, that was based off of like the old oxygen absorber destroyer from like the very first Godzilla back in the 1950s. So it was sort of designed to put a pin in the series because it was the 40th anniversary of the franchise as well.
Cool.
And then there's Fast and Furious. Then I watched Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift.
Nice.
So I thought,
What'd you
hey,
think of the Tokyo Drift one?
I thought it was pretty cool. I enjoyed, as always, the stunt work is really good, and I thought Han was cool. I got bummed when he died, but I know he's going to come back eventually. So
Yeah, and that's the thing is like I think that's a fan favorite for people who like the series. So like and it feels so out of place, the movie does, but then if you continue to watch on the series, they fit it into the continuity and they actually make a concentrated effort to make it fit into the continuity.
kind
So
of
it's just
shove
like
it in there.
yeah,
It's like a square peg in a round hole, but we'll make it work.
yeah, well, and they actually make it work pretty well. So I I give them some props for that. So
And then I watched Godzilla 2000, which came out in 1999, and this film was created and started the third series of Godzilla films. As I'm pretty sure this was created as a direct reaction to the 1998 American Godzilla.
oh, I'm sure it was. Yes, that hack job. Poor Ferris Bueller. He just can't get a good role.
Yeah, Toho was like, "This is garbage. Fine, we're bringing him back."
And it's
It's like
gonna look like Godzilla again.
it's gonna be like the Godfather Part 3. It's like, just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in. If you're a giant monster.
Now we got to bring back all the old monsters again.
Then I watched The Man Who Would Be King, the 1970s classical adventure film starring Sean Connery and Michael Caine, directed by John Huston. So it was kind of a late period John Huston for him, but he had a really long career. He kept directing up until his death in the early 90s. So
And he acted in our a movie from our podcast, The Visitor.
yeah, so this is an old school. It's true, but this is an old school adventure film where it's about two British soldiers stationed in India, and after they're done being British soldiers, they're like, all right, here's their idea. We're going to go to this far off, isolated country, and we're going to take over, and then we're going to become kings.
Awesome.
So this is kind of like an old adventure film, and of course, things go super well, except when they don't. But what makes a movie work, other than sort of the great directing, of course, is the fact that Sean Connery and Michael Caine play off each other really well, and you come to really love these characters, even though they're both kind of scoundrels and con men.
That sounds like my kind of movie.
Yeah, and it almost feels like I'm not sure if you've seen The Road to El Dorado. It's like, was this? It felt like there was definitely like, all right, I could see there's definitely a line from this film to The Road to El Dorado. It's somewhere. I don't know if there's a big connection, but it feels like there's a connection there.
No, I have not seen that either. So
That's a DreamWorks film that I grew up on, even though it's like it wasn't that great, but it definitely became a big cult hit. Then I watched Fast and Furious 4, which is we're back on our BS, and this is the one where Michelle Rodriguez dies, and then she comes back in like two movies. So yeah,
what is
bring
up with
back
that?
Dominic Toretto, Brian O'Connor, the whole gang before they really. And then I'm excited to get to the fifth one because that's when The Rock finally shows up.
Yep, yep. So and then they just get crazier and more fun.
Yes, and then they just eventually become superheroes whose powers are cars.
Yeah. The only one I've been kind of sort of let down by was when they made the Fast and Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw.
Yeah.
I wanted to like that one a lot more just because like the trailer just made it look ridiculous, and it was, but not like it felt like in a different way than the the continuing series of Fast and Furious
Mhm.
movies. But I mean, it was still fun. But yeah, I enjoy the Fast and Furious movies. Progressively for me, they just keep getting better and better.
Can't wait for them to go to space.
I know, right?
They gotta go to space. I want to see Vin Diesel drive a muscle car into space.
Will they get to space before Tom Cruise? Because Tom Cruise wants to film a space film actually in space.
Yeah, but like, I don't know, but cars in space, man. Somehow they'll make it work. It'll
Pigs in
just go like
space.
it'll somehow just go like full like James Bond car and then just like turn into a rocket.
That'd be awesome. I mean, technically, James Bond already went to space, right?
That's true. He did go to space and he had sex in space.
Because I mean, he's, he's James Bond. He'll have sex anywhere.
Yes. Then I watched The Fog, which is by John Carpenter from 1980. He made it in between making Halloween and The Thing. So two very sandwiched between two very good movies.
Oh, Tom Atkins going after a young Jamie Lee Curtis, who's
Yeah, Tom Atkins, Jamie Lee Curtis, Janet Leigh was in there for good measure, and Adrian Barbeau, Hal Hallberg. So it's like it's almost like a bit of a creep show reunion before creep show. So that's kind of fun.
I like the fog.
I
I
think
actually
it's good.
watched it for the first time last year sometime, I think.
I mean, I guess I felt like the plot fell a little bit flat for me. Not quite as interesting as some of his other stuff. But what I did enjoy was, they know their atmosphere, they know their suspense, so good, solid filmmaking.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. The actual fog and the creatures in the fog, like it's really effective. So
And how you can never quite get a clear picture of them, which I think is smart.
yeah, for sure. It was probably done on purpose too, because if you got a clear picture of him, probably wasn't the greatest effects.
Exactly. It's the cat people thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's all 26 of mine.
That is a lot of watching you had there. I think I'll do the same. Just kind of go through quick like and yay or nay here. I saw A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood finally. Tom Hanks was the perfect choice for this movie, and I like this in a contrast with the documentary that came out a couple years ago, because the documentary really got into the life of Mr. Rogers, and this was like an outsider view of this interviewer, like being and what it's like to be affected by Mr. Rogers. So I think it's a really good companion piece to the documentary, and I recommend both of them. I watched another A24 movie on Canopy. I watched The Death of Dick Long from 2019.
Is that
Uh,
a porno?
uh, boy, I
It sounds like a porno.
it's
Was it Death by Snoo Snoo?
no, you don't want to know how the death was, I guess. No, three friends go out drinking, and then the like in the wee hours of the morning, that one of them is like injured, and they drop him off at the hospital and then run away. And they're like, "Oh, he'll be fine," and we don't want to be associated with this. Let's just let him, let the doctors take care of him. Well, he ends up dying, and then these other two that were with him. It really reminded me of Blue Ruin. Have you seen that? Where it's like he's a guy going out for vengeance, but it's like, what if a real person actually went out for vengeance? And like, how many things you just don't think about as like in everything that goes wrong. Well, these two guys are like trying to hide the fact that they're the ones that were with him, and so that like they don't get caught up in this. And then the police start putting things together, and then the way he dies is interesting.
Kind of reminds me of what Richard did, by the way you're describing it.
Oh yeah, the movie we watched for
Movie that we didn't like.
yeah, yeah. In
So
this
before
one,
you start, I missed one. Did I mention Screwball? I don't think I mentioned Screwball.
oh no,
So I'm sorry, I only did 25 of the 26. I mixed up. I missed Screwball for some reason. Screwball is a documentary I found on Netflix. I think might have been made for Netflix. And what it is, it's all about the 2010s. It's about steroid use in baseball. And it's centered around this one guy who ended up kind of accidentally running like this whole steroid clinic out of Miami, Florida, and just going all over the place, all the way up to like A-Rod, the highest player paid in baseball's history. And it's just bizarre. But what's fun and what makes it more interesting, other than just the weird, crazy story itself, was the fact that they use reenactors, but all the reenactors are kids because that's what kids love baseball.
oh nice.
They have kids playing all these characters, even up to like Alex Rodriguez. So it's just
I think now that you say that, I kind of remember this coming out. So interesting. Yeah, not the Dick Long. It was again A24. It was interesting, but like this one, this one wasn't a hit for me. So on Amazon Prime, I watched In the Heat of the Night for the first time. That got knocked off my movie shame list of stuff I haven't
nice.
seen. They call me Mr. Tibbs. I loved it. There's a reason this one's a classic.
It's great.
And dealing with racism in small town, and Sidney Poitier as the detective from what, like Pennsylvania or something like that.
Like
Just
Philadelphia.
yeah, he just knocks this role out of the park. So good. I love Sidney Poitier. He's such a great actor.
It's great whenever he shows up in anything. So
And this is no exception. So In the Heat of the Night, if you haven't watched it, there's a reason people love this movie, and it's on Amazon Prime. So please check it out.
also, one thing I remember about this film when I watched it for the first time was the fact that it's takes place in the South in the middle of summer, so everything feels hot. It
Yeah.
feels hot. You can almost like see the moisture and the humidity going everywhere.
The only thing that bothered me was and I think it was a character choice, was the guy who played the cop.
Rod
The
Steiger.
yeah, Rod Steiger, always chewing gum in just like that really loud, obnoxious way. And just like, oh, God, I can't even. But like, I know it was a character choice. It was like it
Yeah.
works for the character, but it was just like personally, I'm going, stop it with the gum. uh, Another movie I watched on Amazon Prime was 1971. I think it was an Australian film, Wake in Fright. And it's this guy who's like a teacher in this like town of like 10 people, and he's trying to get out of there. He's in a contract, I guess. And the only way he can get out of it is to either teach for so many years or pay his way out of it. So I wonder if this is a real thing, that, the way it worked back then or something in Australia. But he goes to this town onto his way to the city, and I can't remember if he's going to Melbourne or Sydney or something, one of the Australian cities. And he stops in this town, and it seems nice because everyone's super nice. He runs into the cop, and everybody wants to buy him a beer. Everybody's really nice to him. Well, then he kind of falls into this thing where it's like, oh, he starts drinking with him, and then realizes this town is just people who can't go anywhere, and all there is to do is drink there. And he falls into the same trap and loses his money gambling, and then he gets just hammered for a couple of nights with Donald Pleasance, And,
Nice.
and just this weird, almost a 1970s independent Australian film. And it was, I would actually recommend it, and it's on Amazon Prime. And just this bizarre film, and like the ending was interesting too. So um, it's like
Almost
getting.
reminds me it almost sounds like something like the Last Picture Show.
Yeah, and I've seen that a while, but I think I watched that in college, and I remembered liking that one, but I don't remember a lot about it. But yeah, it's about getting stuck in one place, and just not being able to get out of a rut and a trap. So it was an interesting film, and it's on Amazon Prime.
What was the title of that one again?
Wake in Fright. I watched another movie on Amazon Prime. I watched Humanoids from the Deep, a Roger Corman produced film. Another Corman produced film with James Horner. Um, and it has what is we were talking about off screen the Simpsons, and what is the one actor McClure, Troy McClure? Um, Half of his influence is in this movie, Doug McClure, because
Yeah, there was.
it's a mix between Troy Donahue and Doug McClure, two character actors from the '80s in like cheap movies or like low budget movies, and Doug McClure is in this, and it's just about like these mer people in this town and ravaging people and having sex with the women, and because it's a Corman film, so they're not just killing people; they're having this mer people having sex with the women too.
You
Um,
gotta play to your strengths.
but this one, I like a lot of these cheesy old Corman films, but this one just didn't do much for me, and so that was kind of a pass. On Sony Crackle, I watched an Ethan Hawke movie called Predestination. If you've heard of.
Oh, that one's really good.
Okay, have you seen this one? Yeah,
Yes.
this is this really cool little kind of a self-contained story, like a time travel story. Ethan Hawke plays this time traveling detective, and he goes back to stop crimes before they happen, and then he gets caught up with this other person in a bar when he's working in a bar, and then you kind of start getting into this whole time loop thing, and the story is very interesting how they actually work it, and you've got this whole chicken and the egg motif in the film. And and I really liked this one. I thought it was really well put together, and I'm a fan of Ethan Hawke, and I like some of these little quieter films that he does.
Yeah, and this and just don't forget, of course, Sarah Snook probably being the real. There's a lot of the heavy lifting in this film.
Oh yeah, she was very good in this. And that's a high recommend, and that's streaming on Sony Crackle.
Yeah, Predestination is really good.
Speaking of Ethan Hawke, I also watched on Amazon Prime a 1985 film with a very young Ethan Hawke called Explorers. This was a Joe Dante film that I watched with on a pizza movie night with my daughters and my wife, and I really like this one. I like the dynamic between the kids. It's Ethan Hawke and River Phoenix, and I can't remember who the third kid is. I don't think it was anyone who went on to do anything. And of course, there's a small cameo by Dick Miller because it's a Joe Dante film. Uh,
Yeah,
but
Dick Miller was everywhere.
yeah, and he was in every Joe Dante film. But I really like the dynamic between them, and they're just like these outcast kids, and they run into this alien technology and build a little spaceship. The thing that kind of falls apart is the ending, though, when they do go out into space, and then there's like the third act just kind of, it goes away from the whole dynamic between the characters and gets into a kind of a preachy thing, kind of a la um, The Abyss, where it's like, oh, aliens are watching our television and seeing that we're just horrible people. So, because everything is violence on TV and all this stuff. So, and that's why they don't want to visit us, because we're just horrible people if you watch television. So,
Fair enough.
because everything is violent and mean people and all that stuff. So it
What
was
if they
kind of
watched like HGTV though?
yeah, it was kind of a message on like stuff like that. But like before that, it's a very good kind of just young coming of age kind of movie.
Isn't the spaceship voiced by Pee Wee Herman?
That's what I thought I remembered, and I don't think he was in the credits, but I
It's either
think
that one or Flight of the Navigator. They
It's one of
confuse
those.
me.
I think it was Explorers, but I'm not entirely sure. Another one I watched with my family was and I've seen this one over and over and over again is Groundhog Day.
Nice.
See what I did there? I but, I love Groundhog Day. It's on Netflix. If you haven't watched this is one of Bill Murray's like just absolute best.
Hmm.
So that's all I have to say about that. Most people know what Groundhog Day is, and I had another movie that I took off of my list of shame, and that was Taxi Driver. I watched for the first time, and that's on Netflix as well. And I know that I kind of wasn't a big fan of Raging Bull, and mostly because he's just an asshole. And I was like, why do I care about this guy? And see, this is where it depends on the movie because Taxi Driver I really liked because I thought there was more nuance to that character.
Hmm.
Whereas I think Jake LaMotta was just an asshole in real life and he was always an asshole, so you couldn't portray him any other way. There was an underlying thing to um, uh,
Travis Bickle.
Travis Bickle. Sorry, I knew the name because it's a name you hear all the time with in association to this movie, a character name that most people know. But I felt that there was more to him
Yeah,
for
it's
this film.
also pretty very just, I mean, that's talk about like a very specific time and place. I mean, just that is, you could like Google like New York in the 70s and just like, that's what it looked like.
Oh, and that's also one of the things he just hated how gross the city was. The character did, and you just really feel that icky grossness in the way it's filmed. It it is very gritty, and he's got a point to like some of the way some of the streets are just filled with filth, with like literal filth and figurative filth. And and I think there was some nuance to this character.
Yeah, I mean, people have written about it and probably will keep writing about it. So yeah, it's definitely a memorable one. And also, one of the stories I heard behind the scenes was that, like, when Harvey Keitel found out when he was kind of preparing for the role as the pimp, he would just like, because he was like a theater actor working in New York at the time. So he like, when he would just get done with his performance in the theater, he'd like walk across the street and then talk to some pimps.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I can see Keitel doing that too. Oh, now I can't remember. He was a pimp in this. Did you see his penis? Because it was a '70s movie with Harvey Keitel.
Is there a
I mean, you've got what was it? The piano. You've got
I
Port
forgot
of
about
Call. You've got Port of Call, New Orleans. No, that was the Nicolas Cage one. It was Bad Lieutenant, the
yeah.
first Bad Lieutenant. So he was kind of one of those guys. It's like if he's in a movie, you're gonna see his penis.
I don't remember seeing it in this one.
I don't think it was in this one, which is surprising because he played a pimp in this one. But then again, he's just pimping out the girls. He's not doing the stuff. So,
Yeah.
um, but high recommend. I really liked Taxi Driver. On Peacock, I watched Gosford Park from 2001, and this is a really dry movie. It's about like this party going on in this big estate, and you've got all the rich people, and then you've got all the servants. The only thing I found interesting was they really had this dynamic of showing you both worlds and going into them and how they interacted and what they talked about, and that was very
Yeah,
that was,
I liked it, but it is can be kind of dry. But yeah, definitely, and it was made by the same guy who made Downton Abbey, so that kind of explains everything.
full of a lot of great actors. It wasn't my cup of tea. There was a murder, and I really didn't care, and that
Well,
was
I
one.
just thought it was kind of funny that the cast didn't care either.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. So,
The
uh,
characters didn't care. It's like, well, he murdered. That's whatever.
reading the description before I watched it and having heard about this movie, I really wanted to like it more than I did, which was kind of unfortunate. But yeah, that was kind of a pass for me. Like other than the interesting aspect of the two different societies, like the wealthy and their servants. And
Yeah,
then
the
I did
upstate and
like that
downstate.
there was one character that there was a crossover in there that you find out within the movie. So I watched on Tubi. I watched Uninvited, and this is about a cat who
Yeah, there's
who
a Rift Tracks
throws
did this film.
who throws up another killer cat, and then and then it goes back into him. So like the purpose of him puking up a cat that goes to kill instead of the cat just killing, I'm like, I'm in. I like it.
So was it like Alien, where it has like a mouth within a mouth sort of thing, or just
No, it's like he literally like throws up the entire cat. Like the whole cat comes out of a cat.
bizarre?
And it gets caught on a ship with George Kennedy and some other people. So this is from 1987. So it's a 87 horror movie about a killer cat inside of another cat with George Kennedy. So
So many layers.
layers upon layers, cats upon cats.
Just and the cats all the way down.
and and that's another one of those movies that number one, Riff Tracks did it, so that it's probably not of the highest quality. And if anything I describe to you screams, "Oh my god, I'm staying away," then stay away. If any of it screams, "Oh, I've got to see that," then by all means go see it. it's on Tubi. I watched an interesting little
So what
zombie
that's
flick.
about Uninvited? Was it Jellicle?
Uh, no, it was. Well, actually, now I can't even think of any of the other. Mr. Mistopheles. It was a magical cat.
It was magical. Yeah, I could see that.
On Amazon Prime, I watched a little interesting little zombie flick called The Battery, and it's basically just two guys who happen to be on the same baseball team together, and they get thrown into this zombie apocalypse, and they kind of have opposite personalities, and just how they had to form a bond because they couldn't find other people. And there's actually not, it's one of those where there's not a lot of zombie in it other than towards the end. And I I kind of liked this one. It was just a very intimate portrayal of surviving this without going into all the zombie stuff, but like just kind of surviving and having to survive with one other person, like that you don't really know that well, but like you've thrown together for a weird circumstance and you have to adapt to each other. So
Does it end in a romance?
uh I'm not gonna say. uh
It definitely does.
uh I watched another movie on Amazon Prime, another Sidney Poitier film, and I think you talked about this one on here, Lilies of the Field.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one. I wasn't too sure why he kept staying there. It's about a guy he's just kind of a hired hand, and he stops for some water for his carburetor or something, and there's a nunnery there, and I don't remember how much you went into it, but like you also talked about this film, and he's really good in it again because he's Sidney Poitier. So, but that was one thing that just bothered me through the whole movie. I'm going, he kept hating being there, but then he kept staying. But then eventually he got into the project and it became a personal project for him, which is, I liked that, but I was really confused on well, why are you there? Why don't you just leave? So, but that was a good movie, worth checking out. I watched on Tubi. I watched my first Hopalong Cassidy film from 1943 called Border Patrol. This was like barely a movie because it's like 72 minutes long.
Nice.
It was almost like an episode of a serial western, or a western serial. And for that being said, being a short film, I was like, I actually liked the characters of Hopalong and his two companions, and I'd be interested to watch some more Hopalong Cassidy because they seem to be short and just a good little story, and boom, you move on to the next one. So I'd recommend it, and I guess we'll see, because I might check out a couple more, but and if they all kind of get tedious, then I'll kind of quit. But like, having only watched one, I was like, yeah, that was an enjoyable 72-minute western. I watched another one on Amazon Prime called Big Night, and this was a really good one that I will recommend on Prime again, with Stanley Tucci and
It's like Stanley Tucci and like Tony Shalhoub,
Tony
right?
Shalhoub are two brothers who own a small independent or a small Italian restaurant, and they've got like competition down the street, and they're losing like Tony Shalhoub is the cook and he wants everything perfect. And if someone doesn't like his food, he's like, screw that. I'm not going to cater to them. I'm going to make really good food. And then Stanley Tucci is the business part of the business aspect brother. And he's like, we're losing money here. And he hasn't told his brother. And so then the guy down the street like says, hey, I can get Louis Prima to come in and perform at your place. And that gets a lot of people into the restaurant. And it's just a sweet little movie about these two brothers that just trying to get by and with this little Italian restaurant trying to live the American dream. Basically, they got out
I
of
like
it.
to imagine like one of their competitors is Mystic Pizza.
Yes, and Julia Roberts comes to eat with them. But no, I really liked this movie. It's a quiet little movie, and sometimes those are kind of good.
Fun fact: Stanley Tucci did write a cookbook.
Oh, nice. That's that's awesome. Was it an Italian cookbook?
Yes,
Is he actually Italian?
yes.
I did not even know that.
Also, did he have hair in this one?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and I love Tony Shalhoub too, so that was kind of fun to watch him in a little movie
Did
there. So,
did any of the other cast of Wings show up or?
no, we did not get. Oh, now I can't even think of their names, and I used to watch that all the time. But
Yeah, it was like Lowell was Thomas Hayden Church, right?
Thomas
That's the
Hayden
old.
Church, yeah, and I used to know the two guys too, the two main brothers on that show. I knew their names because I'd see them in other things too. Um, but anyway,
The
uh,
best episode of Wings is when they did a crossover with Cheers.
oh, I wonder,
Like somehow, like Cliff and Norm ended up at the airport.
was it actually episode of Cheers or was it an episode of Wings?
It was an episode of Wings where like Cliff and Norm just show up.
Okay, well then I won't get to that one because I'm going through Cheers right now. So I rented a movie, so this one's not streaming anywhere, but this came out in 2019 called Dark Waters with Mark Ruffalo, and I don't know why this one it just kind of came and went, and it had really good reviews, but it just kind of flew under the radar. And it's one of those true story movies about a lawyer, a big time lawyer in New York, and there's back home this small town. Well, DuPont has a waste pile there, and this is based on a true story. And they find out that DuPont has been like dumping these chemicals, and it killed this guy, this farmer's all of his cows, like 190 cows, and so he wants to fight DuPont. And so this lawyer does decide to take on DuPont, and this is a apparently like at the end, they put up the little blurbs, and this is still ongoing. And this started his lawsuit started in like the I want to say in the 90s sometime,
Hmm.
and he's still getting money for people because they found that the chemical it's the chemical that they use to make Teflon, and I kind of remember that being a thing, like you don't see Teflon anymore because yeah, it's not good for you. But it was
Hmm.
they also put at the end that they think that studies show that there could be a trace amount of this chemical in 99% of humans because it was everywhere. If you think about it, in like the 80s and 90s,
Hmm.
it was you cooked things in Teflon pans. Like who didn't have stuff in their nonstick Teflon pan? And it was Teflon was in carpets, and it was in all of this stuff. And what it originally was made for was to waterproof tanks for like World War II. And then
Hmm.
that's what, and there's one point in the movie where they even say it was made for tanks to waterproof them in World War II. And they thought, hey, let's cook food on this stuff. So, and it's a really scary movie. It was actually, one of the scariest movies of 2019 because it shows just how much big companies can get away with anything because they have the money, and how hard it is to fight them in court because it's such an uphill battle to fight people who have all the money and all the power. So, it was a
So
really good.
eat the rich.
Yeah, it was a really good movie though. I'd recommend seeking it out. Another Amazon Prime movie. We watched Footloose with that was another pizza movie night with my family. Yeah, maybe there's some things in there that probably are for an 8 and 11-year-old, but
The
it,
original Footloose or the remake
oh, the
Footloose?
original all the way.
Okay,
And of course, my youngest 8-year-old daughter recognized Kevin Bacon from Tremors, so
nice.
uh, I love Footloose. I love that movie. I love the soundtrack. Another one, most people know what Footloose is. I don't have to say much more. Go watch it.
The
That
only
is
thing
all.
I know about the remake is that they use the same script.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so there's barely any difference.
Okay, maybe that's why it's. I've heard that it's actually kind of good. So that's kind of awesome. Although I hope it's not like the Psycho remake where it was like so shot for shot and word for word that it was pointless to make,
Yeah,
and an exercise in futility. But yeah, go watch the '84 Footloose. I watched on Netflix. There's this I think it's Iranian film, Under the Shadow, a horror movie. There, Iran Iraq war stuff going on, and there's always bombings going on. But then there's this woman and her husband, and she's got a daughter, and her husband goes off. He's a doctor, and he goes off to one of these war zones or whatever, and she's stuck at home. And then her and her daughter start seeing this jinn in their apartment complex, and it's kind of good. It's kind of slow moving at first, but then some of the imagery at the end is really creepy and really effective.
is it
So
like does the Babadook show up too?
no, but it's a very similar vibe. Only I overall like the Babadook more. This one, like I said, it was kind of slow to get into it, but then once they started seeing things, then it got very creepy and very, and it was very simple effects that were not kind of jump scarish, but like they were earned, and they were very visually freaky and you know kind of creepy, and it was effective. So that's an interesting film on Netflix. Just a couple more. I watched The Brothers Bloom on Vudu, and that is a
About
Ryan.
Orlando Bloom and his brother.
Yes. Uh, no, this is actually a Ryan Johnson film that I hadn't seen before. And after watching Knives Out, and this is about two con men brothers, Mark Ruffalo and um, I am having real trouble with names today.
It's one of those days.
It really Brody, the one with the kind of crooked nose.
Adrian Brody.
Adrian Brody. There Mark Ruffalo and Adrian
Crooked
Brody.
nose. Owen Wilson. No.
No, the dark haired crooked nose guy. I feel bad for saying that, but you knew who I was talking about.
Yeah.
No, they're brothers who are con men, and Brody plays the younger brother, and he doesn't really want to be a part of that lifestyle anymore. And then they go to con the gorgeous Rachel Weisz, um, and she kind of actually gets into it. Like she doesn't know she's being conned, but like she gets into the adventure of it because she's like this rich woman who inherited like all this money and a big house, and like she's got she's got no friends and no family and like no one to share the wealth with. So like it and she's great. She's actually really great in the movie. Like, she's so wealthy, like, and she doesn't know how to drive. She keeps buying Lamborghinis, and the only way to park them is to crash into something, and then she just
Nice.
orders another one. But this wasn't my favorite Ryan Johnson film, but it was still good because I he's just a really good storyteller. So I would recommend it if you're a fan of Ryan Johnson.
Cool.
And that was streaming on Vudu. I watched a movie on Tubi called Vamp from 1986, and this is one that I am not sure why it doesn't get mentioned when talking about 80s vampire movies. This was really good. It was about two guys who are trying to get into a frat, and the
Oh no.
the opening is just so great because it's this really gothic opening, and like the music is just eerie, and you're going, oh, okay, we know it's a vampire movie and it's going to be dark, and but it is comedy, but like, and then they zoom in and like there's this bell tower and you're like, oh, what is this? Is this going to be like the past where there's zombies and stuff? It's like, oh no. Then we come in and there's a guy hanging in the belfry, and then it goes over to two other guys who are standing there, and it's the two guys trying to get in the frat, and and then they're just like, oh wait, hold on, come on, this is tired, like doing this whole thing to get into your frat, this is stupid, can we just cut through this? And it's like, what do you need? Like, we'll go get it for you. Anything you want, if that'll get us into the frat. Like, why are we going through this rigmarole? So of course
Funny.
they're like, we're gonna have a party and we need you to go get us a stripper. so so they get into like this crappy part of town, and it's just so good because the way it's written, and just like things are implied, it's implied that you know about vampires, because there's even one scene where he's like, stake through the heart, like, you know how to kill a vampire, sunlight stakes, it's just like, this, and some of the subtle things too, where like, you start noticing and they don't point it out, like in the strip club, it's almost like Dusk Till Dawn because it's a strip club run by vampires, but
Nice.
they don't point it out, but you start noticing that, like, oh, the bathroom mirror is gone, there are no mirrors like by the stages, there's no mirrors behind the bar, like, but it's never brought to your attention, but it's the little details like that it's like, oh, if you're a fan of vampires, you just notice it without them holding your hand and going, oh, see, look at, hey, look, and it's a well written one. And then you have Grace Jones, who actually is like build in the high build in the thing, and I think for the advertising you always see Grace Jones, and she's in this like weird red wig, and she is the leader of the zombies, and it's Grace Jones, so when she comes out and does a dance, it's really like this weird avant-garde, like bizarre
Nice.
thing. And they're like, oh yeah, that's the stripper we want to get. uh and and so then of course they have to get away from the zombie or the vampires. So uh I really liked this one, and this is on streaming on Tubi. So if you've seen all the vampire movies from the 80s and you maybe haven't heard of this one, or have heard of it but just haven't heard much about it, it's really good. So, but anyway, that's what I watched, and this has been a long episode, but there's hopefully a lot of stuff that interests people out there.
So before we go, what are you gonna watch next?
Well, let's check it out.
Well, I'll say what I'm gonna watch next. I'm just gonna keep on rolling the Godzilla gravy train because I still got like a few more in the Millennium series, and then I'll get to the current series with like Shin Godzilla when I get to that one. So eventually, yeah. Next up is Godzilla versus Megaguirus, which is basically like Godzilla versus the Fly,
Oh, nice.
except no Jeff Goldblum, which is a shame. I want to see a giant Jeff Goldblum.
Well, see, now that's a movie I need to rewatch. Is Fly? I own that one. I'm gonna have to watch that soon. I have such a long list on Real Good. I could watch streaming movies until like my death off of this list. I think I never have to rent a physical DVD again. Looks like next on my list, on my Real Good list, is The Grandmaster from 2013. So on Netflix,
Cool.
it's about the Ip Man.
Oh,
So
okay. So it's a
it's
martial arts sort of thing.
yeah. So looks pretty interesting. So we'll see what I have to say about that next time. And uh, speaking of next time, in the meantime, you can catch us online. I am on Twitter at AwesomeKM.
And I'm on Twitter at Noah_Saturn. That is spelled Satern.
And I have been posting more on Instagram. I just kind of put what I'm watching as I watch them. So a lot of these movies uh, I've mentioned on Instagram. If you want to follow, and we're at We Don't Know What to Watch. And if you want to comment on those posts, if you've seen the movies or not, So
Also, one last thing before we leave. The New Mutants is finally supposed to come out.
the New Mutants. I really want to see that.
I want to see it too, but I don't want to die, so I'm not going to go to a theater.
No, here's my thing. I'm glad the theaters are opening because now we can start seeing like things like the New Mutants and Tenet and
And Bill and Ted.
Bill and Ted Face the Music, because I have been really getting sad about the lackluster DVD releases the last couple of months. So it'll be nice to get things in the theater again and start getting like movies I really want to see coming out on DVD. So I'll let everyone else go to the theater and get sick if they want to. Fine. And then that just means that it's been released and then I can eventually see it on DVD. So,
Radical.
but anyway, until next time, keep watching.
And be excellent to each other. Bye bye.